The Prince with the Golden Hand, Part 1. Slavic Folktale. There once lived a king and queen who had an only daughter, and the beauty of this princess surpassed everything seen or heard of. Her forehead was brilliant as the moon, her lips like the rose, her complexion had the delicacy of the lily, and her breath the sweetness of jessamine. Her hair was golden, and in her voice and glance there was something so enchanting that none could help listening to her or looking at her. The princess lived for 17 years in her own rooms, rejoicing the heart of her parents, teachers, and servants. No one else ever saw her, for the sons of the king and all other princes were forbidden to enter her rooms. She never went anywhere, never looked upon the outside world, and never breathed the outer air, but she was perfectly happy. When she was 18 it happened, either by chance or by the will of fate, that she heard the cry of the cuckoo. This sound made her strangely uneasy, her golden head drooped, and covering her eyes with her hands, she fell into thought so deep as not to hear her mother enter. The queen looked at her anxiously, and after comforting her went to tell the king about it. For many years past the sons of kings and neighboring princes had, either personally or by their ambassadors, presented themselves at court to ask the king for the hand of his daughter in marriage, but he had always bidden them wait until another time. Now, after a long consultation with the queen, he sent messengers to foreign courts and elsewhere to proclaim that the princess, in accordance with the wishes of her parents, was about to choose a husband, and that the man of her choice would also have the right of succession to the throne. When the princess heard of this decision her joy was very great, and for days she would dream about it. Then she looked out into the garden through the golden lattice of her window, and longed with an irresistible longing to walk in the open air upon the smooth lawn. With great difficulty she at last persuaded her governesses to allow her to do so, they agreeing on condition that she should keep with them. So the crystal doors were thrown open, the oaken gates that shut in the orchard turned on their hinges, and the princess found herself on the green grass. She ran about, picking the sweet-scented flowers and chasing the many-colored butterflies, but she could not have been a very prudent maiden, for she wandered away from her governesses, with her face uncovered. Just at that moment a raging hurricane, such as had never been seen or heard before, passed by and fell upon the garden. It roared and whistled round and round, then seizing the princess carried her far away. The terrified governesses wrung their hands, and were for a time speechless with grief. At last they rushed into the palace, and throwing themselves on their knees before the king and queen, told them with sobs and tears what had happened. They were overwhelmed with sorrow and knew not what to do. By this time quite a crowd of princes had arrived at the palace, and seeing the king in such bitter grief, inquired the reason of it. "Sorrow has touched my white hairs," said the king, "the hurricane has carried off my dearly beloved child, the sweet princess with the golden hair, and I know not where it has taken her. Whoever finds this out, and brings her back to me, shall have her for his wife, and with her half my kingdom for a wedding present, and the remainder of my wealth and titles after my death." After hearing these words, princes and knights mounted their horses and set off to search throughout the world for the beautiful princess with the golden hair, who had been carried away by Vicar. Now among the seekers were two brothers, sons of a king, and they traveled together through many countries asking for news of the princess, but no one knew anything about her. But they continued their search, and at the end of 2 years arrived in a country that lies in the center of the earth, and has summer and winter at the same time. The princes determined to find out whether this was the place where the hurricane had hidden the princess with the golden hair, so they began to ascend one of the mountains on foot, leaving their horses behind them to feed on the grass. On reaching the top, they came in sight of a silver palace supported on a cock's foot, while at one of the windows the sun's rays shone upon a head of golden hair. Surely it could only belong to the princess. Suddenly the north wind blew so violently, and the cold became so intense, that the leaves of the trees withered and the breath froze. The two princes tried to keep their footing, and battled manfully against the storm, but they were overcome by its fierceness and fell together, frozen to death. Their broken-hearted parents waited for them in vain. Masses were said, charities distributed, and prayers sent up to God to pity them in their sorrow. One day when the queen, the mother of the princes, was giving a poor old man some money she said to him, "My good old friend, pray God to guard our sons and soon bring them back in good health." "Ah, noble lady," answered he, "that prayer would be useless. Everlasting rest is all one may ask for the dead, but in return for the love you have shown and the money you have given the poor and needy, I am charged with this message that God has taken pity on your sorrow, and that ere long you will be the mother of a son, the like of whom has never yet been seen." The old man, having spoken thus, vanished. The queen, whose tears were falling, felt a strange joy enter her heart and a feeling of happiness steal over her, as she went to the king and repeated the old man's words, and so it came to pass, for a week or two later God sent her a son, and he was in no way like an ordinary child. His eyes resembled those of a falcon, and his eyebrows the sable as fur, his right hand was of pure gold, and his manner and appearance were so full of an indescribable majesty, that he was looked upon by every one with a feeling of awe. His growth, too, was not like that of other children. When but 3 days old, he stepped out of his swaddling clothes and left his cradle, and he was so strong that when his parents entered the room he ran towards them, crying out, "Good morning, dear parents, why are you so sad? Are you not happy at the sight of me?" "We are indeed happy, dear child, and we thank God for having sent us you in our great grief, but we cannot forget your 2 brothers, they were so handsome and brave, and worthy of a great destiny, and our sadness is increased when we remember that, instead of resting in their own country in the tomb of their forefathers, they sleep in an unknown land, perhaps without burial. Alas! It is 3 years since we had news of them." At these words the child's tears fell, and he embraced his parents and said, "Weep no more, dear parents, you shall soon be comforted, for before next spring I shall be a strong young man, and will look for my brothers all over the world, and I will bring them back to you, if not alive, yet dead, though I have to seek them in the very center of the earth." To be continued.